And to me, that's been a consistent theme, consistency over intensity, and that slow and steady wins the race. And I think real estate is that.
Designed to encourage, empower, and educate real estate professionals by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and this is Calibrate Real Estate. Broadcasting from the Mile High City. Thank you for tuning in to the Calibrate Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Malnati, and our esteemed guest today is a good buddy of mine, Scott Steadman, from a neighboring state, the state of Utah, where Coloradans are much better than Utonians. I don't even know.
I've heard that a time or two.
I don't even know if that's what you call Utah people. What do people, we say Coloradans. What do you say in Utah?
Utahns.
Utahns. All right.
Just add an NS to it.
There we go. Well, a neighboring state, and love hanging out with you. Scott and I have met several times in person. He's a 30 under 30, as I am, as people that have listened and tuned into the podcast for a long time know. Scott and his wife, Lauren, and their dog live in Utah. Scott's a realtor with Windernere. And Scott, we're going to talk about real estate from a hyperlocal focus. We're also going to talk about trying things out, iterating, not being too bashful to try something new. So as we dive into a couple of those topics, we were discussing right before we started recording that, one of the things that you think about being interviewed here, obviously you were recognized nationally by 30 under 30 with Realtor Magazine. But one of the things you were saying to me is just, hey, I don't know if I'm doing anything all that different, all that special. I think that there's a lot of fads that come and go in real estate. And you had just self-reflected that, maybe I'm not doing many different things. I just show up every day. And I think that's the point. I think that a lot of people get stuck on the latest hype. They go chase shiny objects. I like fishing. I like going and doing fly fishing or spin casting. It's like a lure, right? People get lured all over the place and jerked around, and they're just chasing shiny objects. So talk about what is the fundamentals and the foundation of your business and how you're successful doing what is now becoming very pop culture, which is this idea of hyperlocal, which is really just old-fashioned geographic farming.
Yeah. Well, first off, I, again, just want to say thanks for letting me be on your show. And I jokingly said to Kyle before we started here, I hope you got the right person because I'm not sure that I'm going to bring some value to your show, but hopefully, my goal is to hopefully, inspire as I've been inspired, and hopefully share a few new things to some other people.
Oh, go on. You're being too humble. Come on.
Yeah. So, for me, I think I got into the industry because I had family in the industry. So I don't have a really unique story. Kind of grew up in what we call a traditional neighborhood, but my mother actually has been in real estate her whole life. So she had told me, go to school, do this. And at the time I got into real estate, I just wasn't satisfied. I was working for a large financial institution and tried to get promoted a few times and just said, I'm going to give real estate a go. And having obviously a mentor like your mother, I don't think that there's a better one, because not only as a parent, she's let you do things and fail at those things, knowing that there's a lesson to be learned there. And my early days in real estate were very similar to those. Getting back, sorry, getting a little off topic there on your hyperlocal question, but a lot of the business that I focus on is the neighborhood that I grew up in. It's a master plan community of about 1,400 homes, and I kind of grew up in this community. So some things that we're doing and kind of just putting your head down and going to work is, one, to treat it like a real job. I feel like a lot of people get into real estate and they have these eyes that are bigger than their stomach, and they're like, yeah, my buddy's going to buy a house, and then my family, whatever, and I can make, X number of dollars. And then it's like, well, great. What do you do after that? So a real turning point for me in learning those fundamentals was, getting some formal coaching outside of having a mentor, not in the home, because I wasn't living in the home when I got into real estate, but going through some coaching programs. And that was the Larry Kindle Ninja training. And what I loved about it, yep, nice plug there. What I loved about it is there is nothing that anyone can't do. I mean, we're talking about getting back to basics of, having an active sphere, managing your sphere, sending handwritten thank you notes, doing client appreciation parties, and just treating people as a friend. For me, not to ramble on too much here, but I think a lot of it comes back to your intent as a real estate agent. And, if your intent is to be a trusted resource, to be an advocate, to be a friend to these people, and to give without expectation of something coming in return, they will go to you when that time comes, whether it's a death, divorce, delivery, change of job, whatever. If you have been there for them, been active in the community, they've seen you around, along with, kind of some of the real estate principles, which, maybe you and I can talk about a little bit more. It's not rocket science.
It really isn't. And that's why we're not called rocket scientists. It's beneficial because it's one of the lowest barrier to entry businesses in the world. And you can really start up a real estate business with a cell phone, a laptop. You probably don't even need a laptop. You can do contracts on electronic software. You've got access to an MLS database that used to be a big old thick book years and years ago. I'm sure your mom would tell you about that. And it's a very easy business to enter, but it's not one that's easy to succeed. And one of my mentors, one of my digital mentors, someone that I have not met yet in person, is Brian Buffini. I love listening to Brian Buffini's podcast. I just read his book, The Immigrant Edge. Brian Buffini talks about, look, there are so many new fads in real estate. It's all the same stuff. It's all pop-bys to your existing clients. It's words of affirmation in a quick handwritten note. It is delivering value to people by doing broker's price opinions, doing proactive valuations on people's houses or commercial real estate if you're in commercial real estate. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, we didn't really get there as we were prepping, and it's just the bookmark that I have in my Ninja Selling book with Larry Kendall. So Larry's from Fort Collins, Colorado. He owns a company called The Group, which is a ninja selling organization. Larry has become so good at training agents. He has this very big side business, which is training and consulting with realtors all across the US. There are these ninja installations that people will go to. I've had plenty of friends that have gone to it. And he created this book, which is awesome. I mean, you can buy it for $20. It's called Ninja Selling by Larry Kendall. And we didn't really get into this, but I want to read one page 151 from the book. And I want to hear some feedback from you, Scott, on this. So Larry talks about the database dialogue, and he writes here in page 151, when Pat and I moved to Fort Collins, we did not know a single person. My database was zero. My goal was to meet and add 2 to 3 people per week in a very incremental approach. We got involved in various organizations, the United Way, Chamber of Commerce, church, playing on a city league basketball team, the Fort Collins Newcomers Organization for people new to town, among others. I could have simply loaded the rosters from these organizations into my database and started blasting them with my flow. Flow is something he talks about in the book. Somehow, that didn't feel right to me. It seemed like I would come off as the new salesman in town. Instead, I wanted to at least start a relationship before adding flow. So I chose to only add people I had connected with. In most cases, they asked me if they could receive something from me, that is, be on my database. Our dialogue went like this. Step 1 was introduction. I would introduce myself and then start asking Ford questions. People love to talk about their family. That's the F. Occupation is the O. R is the recreation. And then the final one was dreams and relationships for the D. Step number 2, reciprocity. After a period of time, people would realize they were doing all of the talking and they would start asking me the Ford questions. Step number 3, offer value. Eventually, they would wonder what business I was in. When I told them I was a real estate broker with the group, they almost always asked this question, and here's the hook. How's the market? And I can think of so many swim meets, neighborhood barbecues, walking my kids to school where people will say, and they'll see my Calibrate jacket like I have, and they'll just say, how's the market? And then this is the gold. And I highlighted this on this one page. For those of you that want to know what I highlighted, I said, I would respond, the market is very interesting right now. It depends on the market segment you're in. Which part of the market most interests you? Question mark. Residential, commercial, new home, investments, or a particular neighborhood. And then you shut up.
Yep.
So my feedback on that question, then I want to ask you, Scott. So I wrote in this Post-it note that's still sticking in my book, right above my highlight, is I said, this answer is perfect and you need to memorize it. This answer allows you to be multifaceted and your relationship will dictate the direction of the conversation. And I loved it because so many people ask us that question, how's the market? And this is the perfect response. And it's why Ninja Selling is so great and why, to your point, our business is not that hard, but we get in the way sometimes, don't we?
Yeah. And this is one thing. So through the group and through some of the in-house training that we do within my brokerage, this is one that we always go back to is how's the market? And a lot of different things that, that I've used in my business is, well, which part of the market are you talking about? Because, how's the market could be the house that they're living in. How's the market could be interested in an investment property. It could be a property for a child. It could be a vacation home. And so really drilling down to, their specific market need and kind of disseminating that information. There's no shortage of information out there today between all of the different technology websites. And hopefully I don't get a little off topic here, but I had a listing appointment earlier this week. And it was very interesting to me because it was just your general listing consultation. And we went over there, and from a consumer standpoint, I tried to approach it as, how's the market? How's the value for my house? And so what I did is I go online to these different third-party portals and tried to look at it from their point of view and how's the market. And interestingly, there is such a wide range in these automated valuation models that sitting down and going, okay, Zillow says this, Redfin says this, Trulia says this, Realtor.com says this, my brokerage website says this, my MLS says this. And then kind of looking at those. And in this particular case, there was a $400,000 discrepancy in value. So looking at it from that point of view, how's the market there? I think that's our job then to interpret that. What does this mean? How can I help you make the best decision for you and your family? Here's the information. Let's talk about how your home fits in this $400,000 range, which was, by the way, the most bizarre pricing that I've ever seen for a home.
Isn't that great though? Because it enables you to be the expert. What happens, and this is Brian Buffini again. Brian Buffini says that we are in a society that is drowning in information and starving for wisdom. As a real estate professional, your job is to be the wise sage, to help your client, who is the hero, figure out how to win the day. Right? So Brian Buffini says this, you're saying it. People will have 5 or 6 different data points, none of which point to the same thing. It's wonderful because you can then create clarity for them. And that's the value proposition that all of us have. If you're hyper local, and as you've told me, as you're living in a neighborhood that you grew up in and that you had, all of these positive feelings and people knew you from being, a younger boy, you have the ability to say, look, I know where the market has gone over all these periods of time. We've been market experts. We're not going anywhere. And this is just another data mechanism. So for people who think that Zillow, Redfin, or whatever the next new tech startup is the boogeyman, you're wrong. And you're thinking about it like a victim. I would say use that information to your advantage. Look at it beforehand. And a lot of the people that are in my mastermind group that meets once a month, that meets once a month, have talked about that they just pull all that stuff up and put it in their listing presentation. When they do a listing consultation, they know all the stuff because they know their clients are already looking at it before you meet with them. They want someone on their side. They want a human, that interaction. And those are the people you want to work with anyways. You don't want to work with the person who is going to hire a discount brokerage firm because that's not really what your value proposition is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, along with being an interpreter of information, and I think it was either a Zillow study or the NAR study, people want to trust you, and people need to trust you, and they need to know that you're not just looking at them as a paycheck. And if you don't mind, I just want to share a story about kind of being a what I call a hyperlocal expert. In a Facebook group, about 6 months ago, someone had just asked the question, "Hey, we're considering selling. Who should we use?" And a flood of information comes through, right? You have use this person, use this company. We're seeing in our market some flat fee brokerages that are really embracing technology. And quite frankly, it's beautiful. It is upping the game of the existing agents, and it is making us innovate, because there is a place in the market for a flat fee brokerage. There is a place in the market for a full service brokerage, for an online brokerage, all of these different things. These particular folks ended up interviewing 12 people. Kind of bizarre to go through, and the guy, absolutely love him, set them up every hour on the hour. Come in, give me your spiel. So we got, luckily enough, got invited back to do a second interview. And just in chatting with them, and then of course, once they let us know, I just said, "I know that you interviewed a lot of people. What was it about us that you decided to list with us?" And he said, "I've seen you around the neighborhood. I see that you do open houses. I've received your just listed and just sold postcards. I follow your blog. And I just trusted that you would have my best interest because of what you told to me. You weren't the highest recommendation value. You weren't the lowest, but I trusted you that you would be an advocate for me." And to me, that was really, really special to know that I was going up against, 11 great agents, and, just kind of, as we talked about at the beginning of this, just doing your job. And the things that we're doing, are not really super crazy. I mean, we're on social media, we're doing, all the photography that we should, all the video that we should. I could do better. And that's, really important to learn, is that, hopefully 6 months from now, I'm better than I am today. And 6 months ago, I would think I'm better now. But getting back to that, being a trusted advocate was so rewarding to me, and just doing what, the basic principles that I have been taught.
Well, and you talked about maybe being able to do things better, and we all fall into that trap, frankly. One of the things I say around my organization a lot is done is better than perfect. That's not permission for you to slack off, but done is better than perfect. Send it. And one of our past guests this year was talking with someone else, and they were basically saying something to the effect of really quality videos. And, my videos that I'm putting out there are crushing the videos that you never send, because you're focusing on all these infinitesimal details, and you get analysis paralysis, basically. That was their point. So you talk about being innovative and having the courage to make some mistakes. I think a lot of people get bent out of shape when they make a mistake. So I can imagine, and we've been buddies for a while, so I know that there's some truth in this as I ask this question, but how have you created some comfort with changes and things that, might not go exactly how you plan them out from the get-go? So how do you innovate? How do you iterate? And how do you blend those two together to say, like, it's okay to make some mistakes? And then how do we make our course corrections? How do we calibrate to making sure that that first model gets better every single time? So what does that mean to you, Scott?
Yeah. One thing, a 2019 resolution for me is to not try and have everything perfect right from the get-go. And you just spoke about this. And sometimes I think that, we're our own worst critics. And, when we roll out that video or those photography, we're like, dang it, I left, the soap on the kitchen sink, or the, cord is in the photo. We can't do that. Get the photographer back out here to reshoot. But in the general scheme of things, people are swiping right, and it's not going to matter. And so I think, not being afraid to just try. And if there's an idea, try, see how it goes. And I also think that just being open, if something is new, don't be afraid to share that. If you're trying out, a new way to market a property, or a new type of, communication, or a new program or whatever, and you have a test client, I don't think your clients are going to bite you if you're trying to be leading edge and trying something new to help the process be better for not only yourself, but most importantly them. And so just saying, hey, we're going to try this. I want you to give me some feedback after that. If something's not working, let us know. But this is new to us, and we think it's really great because A, B, and C. And being okay with the real raw feedback that may come from them.
Well, I love that you say that being okay with the raw feedback and being okay to say, hey, like, this is a test. We're seeing some things that are pointing this direction, but if you'll go with us, we're not sure it's going to perfectly work out, but we want to try things. We want to be innovative. We want to try some new things. And I would venture a guess, you know, as you talk about being interviewed amongst 10 or 11 or 12 other realtors for this listing you were talking about, this consultation that you were a part of. I just sold a property where I was, now it wasn't 10, 11, 12, it was 6 brokerage firms total. So I was one, there were 5 other brokerage firms. And man, doesn't that feel awesome when you get selected out of that much competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling, right? To know that you're sticking to what you know to be right, to sticking to your pricing. You know, we've all had those listing appointments, whether it's commercial or residential, where you maybe feel like other people bought the listing and said you know, and to me, that's a disservice. If they've overvalued a property, you see it come down, but you know, you have to be okay with trusting what you believe, and then also owning up to it. You know, if you give a wrong pricing recommendation, and you need to be okay with taking accountability on both sides of that.
One of the things I like to say a lot in my listing consultations is that real estate valuation is far more an art than a science. As much as we would love to say that every property is cookie cutter and this is just a big analysis, it's more art than science. And I think that for those that think you can be completely analytical or use some algorithm to come up with the real estate values, there's just so much bad information out there, whether it's the assessor's office has something wrong or someone slipped in unpermitted, you know, this improvement that no one knows about, except for when you walk through the home. That's the other thing too, is the drive-by appraisal or the drive-by valuation without ever walking through. It's like, how do you know? So I just love the spot that we're in right now because there's just so much information out there. And this is a professionals market. This is a market that people who are serious about it, who show up to work every day, who treat this like a career and not some fleeting, you know, idea that they want to just kind of try out real estate, or it sounds like something they could do on their free time. This is a career for real estate professionals. And I like it when the market gets a little bit tumultuous, a little bit of tension. I've been in now for 15 years, and markets for realtors are great when they're going up and when they're going down. When they flatten, where everything's just going great, it's not the best market to be in. So I think that as people are seeing longer days on market, as we're seeing more price reductions, and I know that Utah and Colorado is similar, you know, you get more price reductions now than we had a few years ago. Those are good things. And you need to be that advocate that's helping your client understand that, look, it might take more than a hot second to sell this house. Be prepared to do showings for the next 30 days. We might have to do 4 open houses. We might have to deal with some weather. We might have to deal with whatever. So the other thing I picked up on that I just want to give you kudos to, that you call your client meetings listing consultations, because that inherently says there's going to be some Q&A here. I'm going to sit here like a professional and ask you questions. I'm not going to completely drive the process. This is still your home. This is still your property. I'm going to be an advocate for you and do things the way you want. One final thought that I have, and I imagine that this might be the case for you too, when you win from a listing consultation and you end up getting the listing competing with all these other very valuable brokerage firms, it's pretty interesting when your client kind of pulls back the storyline of like, hey, this brokerage firm said that they do this, this brokerage firm said that they do that, and they start to kind of create a mashup marketing plan of what maybe the best practices are from several other brokerage firms. And in this past situation where I listed a property this past fall, sold it just a few weeks ago, it was really, really cool to see what other brokerage firms were talking to our client about. And they said, I want to basically take the best practices from everybody and let's try to create the best marketing approach. That was really neat for me. How about you?
Yeah. And, you know, that's actually something that I've integrated into the listing consultations is saying, you know, if you are interviewing others, which we generally recommend that as we're sitting with people, to say, it's not a bad idea to get 2, 3, 4 different opinions. And you're hearing something that I'm not saying, let's talk about it. There's probably not something that I haven't done, nor is there something that I'm unafraid to try. But at the end of the day, we're going to be talking a lot. You've seen how I communicate here with you today. This is what you can expect going forward. You've seen my process leading up to a listing consultation. We've done A, B, and C. Then there's a process of following up as well. And I don't want the reason that you don't select me to help represent you on the sale of your home to be because XYZ brokerage said that they're going to do whatever that shiny object is. So if at the end of the day, you're looking at things and, you're, going, gosh, we really want to work with Scott, but let's talk about it. This is an open and transparent relationship. We need to trust each other. We're dealing with your most important financial asset in most cases. And if we don't have that established trust and rapport, it's not going to be successful.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Okay. So a couple of our last questions before we end our interview are things that I've asked a lot of people. I imagine that the 30 under 30 honor for Realtor Magazine, from Realtor Magazine, I should say, was a huge, impactful, monumental experience for you. What are some of those big mountaintop experiences in your career that people might not know about? And then we'll talk about 30 under 30. But what are some of the other real memorable experiences that you've had in your career? I remember you talking about being a young boy in your neighborhood and being able to create some long-term relationships as a young kid, but then some of the other relationships that you've had over the time that you'd like to share with us today.
Yeah, one thing that I've really tried to take more note of and just been fascinated with is, how do we measure success in our industry? And, there's a lot of different metrics out there, customer service statistics and, likes on photos that you post on, oh my gosh, this kitchen got so many likes, whatever it is. But I've been really trying to take note of, maybe service metrics that we don't normally pay attention to. So like when someone posts to Facebook, hey, I'm looking for a realtor, and it's not the number of likes that you get, but it's people voluntarily saying, you should work with this person because of this. And that is not anything that is prefaced by me, hey, will you go on to Facebook and do this? But to see, and specifically for me in kind of the neighborhood that I work in, that they've seen me before. They know I'm not going anywhere. We saw him at the city council meeting. We saw him at the HOA meeting. We saw him walking his dog around the community. We know that he cares. And so measuring success, for me, I've tried to focus a little bit more on, what other people are saying and how they came about me. I don't know if that makes sense, but just trying to pay attention to cutting through the weeds of all these other metrics and just going, wow, that was so cool that so-and-so recommended you.
That is the kindest compliment, is a referral, right? And it's pure gold in our industry when someone refers you to their friend, and it's because they know you, they like you, and they trust you. Old-fashioned fundamental stuff about sales. People work with those that they know, that they like, and that they trust. And it goes in that order. You know someone first, then you say, okay, do I like that person? Yeah, you like them. And then can I really trust them? Can I trust them to sell something that's $500,000 or $1 million? I mean, this is a big decision for a lot of people. So when people are raving fans and say, Scott sold this property for me and he's awesome, and did you know that he was Realtor Magazine 30 under 30? That means like he's one of the top agents across the US and blah, blah, and they go running through walls for you, right? That is awesome. I mean, that is way cooler than any award you could win from an association or any, frankly, the commission is what a very famous author, this guy who wrote a book called Thou Shalt Prosper. He's a Jewish rabbi named Daniel Lapin. And he says that when people pay you money in the form of commission or a sale or whatever, it is certificates of appreciation with dead presidents' faces on them. That's what money is. It's a certificate of appreciation. So I love your answer. Okay, my final question for everybody is this idea of Dear Younger Me. Okay, you're writing yourself a letter, or maybe you're mentoring, and I don't know if you're doing this right now at Windernere, but maybe you're mentoring someone in their early 20s. And I would like to be real specific. It's the beginning of the year. We're into February now. It's cold. Real estate market may not have heated up yet. Someone who's feeling really stuck And you've got this ability to write yourself a letter or to impart some wisdom to someone. It's the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. So if you're writing that letter, dear younger me, what advice would you give to someone that's in their 20s that may be struggling, that may be feeling like they don't have everything figured out, and they look at Scott Steadman, who's been nationally recognized and is just doing so awesome, is super serving his clients? What's that advice you'd give to someone that's 22 years old?
That at one point, most successful people were in your exact same shoes, that everybody started somewhere. And, coincidentally, I am doing that this year. One of my goals was to mentor someone who is new to the industry, and this gal is in her young 20s. And, just focusing on one, being yourself. People will end up working with you because they, like we've already talked about, know, like, and trust you. To show up, to treat this like a real job, to stick with the fundamentals of being a real estate agent. And I don't care if that's ninja selling, Brian Buffini, Tom Ferry, paying for leads online, whatever it is, become so entrenched in that you are the expert in that, and don't get, eyes and start chasing these different things. Cause I see so many people that get in and do that. And I didn't make a sell. I can't remember how long it took me to get my first solo sale, but it's okay if it takes 6 months, as long as when that comes, you've done it the right way. You've learned the systems, the processes. So I would just say, simply put, slow down, learn the fundamentals, and everything else will follow. Don't worry about the money. The money will come if you do a good job.
Something that I like to think about that's a really good metaphor for success in real estate is that we are not in the microwave business. This is not put it on high for 30 seconds and you nuke your burrito. We're in the crock pot business, slow cooking. This thing's going to simmer, and this is going to last 20, 30, 40 years. So if you have that long-term approach, if you've got that slow and methodical tortoise and hare approach, you will succeed. You do need to save your money. I think that for folks that are younger, stop trying to chase all these shiny objects and reinvest in the areas where you know that people know you, like you, and trust you. And I think that's just geographic farming. It's being hyperlocal. Scott, this has been such a fun opportunity to talk together. We're at the end of our time. All of our interviews just fly by for me. But I would say that for those of you out there that are listening or tuning in via YouTube and you can see us, just understand that both of us at one point in our career didn't have it figured out. Both of us at one point in our career worked for mentors that got this accolade 30 under 30. And we saw it and we said, that's what I want to do. And you model by looking at other people who are a few steps ahead of you, and be humble enough to ask questions. Be a student, be a sponge, constantly approach this business like, what am I going to learn today? And who can I super serve? And I think that the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other final thought here. It's funny you mentioned tortoise and the hare. I'm at my home office today because of a snowstorm here, but in my office, my building, I have the story of the tortoise and hare that hangs on my wall. I got it framed. And to me, that's been a consistent theme, consistency over intensity, and that slow and steady wins the race. And I think real estate is that.
My man, we are kindred spirits. I never knew that. And I love that. I think that's awesome. Yep. Well, for our podcast producer, Kayla Davis, and for Scott Steadman, our guest, I'm your host, Kyle Malnati. I love to say this, but before I do, I've been teasing this for a little while. We have been focusing on getting 5-star reviews on Apple iTunes. We just hit 20 5-star reviews. Thank you for everybody that's reviewed the show, whether it's on Apple iTunes with a subscribe, or on YouTube or Spotify, however you're tuning in or watching or listening or doing whatever. Thank you. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This book, Ninja Selling by Larry Kendall, I am going to celebrate. And I told everybody in the past that I would celebrate. I will give 5 books free to anybody that emails info@calibrate.re.com. Again, that's info@calibrate.re.com. I will buy you a book, Ninja Selling. If you are feeling stuck and you don't know what to do in the new year, that book will get you back on track. Scott Steadman, I am so appreciative of your interview today. it's just so great to be able to interview you in this context, to be able to share what you and I have talked about privately in several different meetings at our 30 Under 30 reunion. So thank you so much. Be well, my friend. And as I love to say, we will see you around the neighborhood. Bye, everybody. See you later.